Well, when we first started looking at this, doing this stream, you said you wanted to talk about the hand grenade thing that was going on a couple of years ago. So if you take up the chart just entitled "Hand Grenades."
Oh yeah, I was specifically including clips from the hand grenade report. That's true. Now, all of the people I showed all the people interviewed or etc. I showed in the intro video are political figures in Sweden, so we might touch on them later. Let's see here. So, detonated hand grenades. Okay, that's a chart. Let's share this here. So this is in Gothenburg, Stockholm, Malmo, and then the entire country as a whole in yellow.
Yes.
Okay, so in the span of, I'd say basically 10 years, you went from like no hand grenades to 116.
Yeah, and then it kind of disappeared.
Now, I mean, we can maybe be charitable here then, I suppose, and say that some of these are accidental detonations. But that's a very... Something happened in 2014, 2015 here.
Yeah, I mean the earliest, if you go back into the early notes there in 2011, 2012, 2013, the primary users of this guy were the people from the Balkans who are in a criminal environment. So essentially, it wasn't really used that much. But then what probably happened that they had a couple of boxes from the Balkans war laying in a basement somewhere, and then he thought, hey, we have all these drug pushing gangs out in the projects. Let's just sell them the hand grenades that we have.
Jesus. Vingol in the chat asks if the total number is that from 2011 to 2018.
Yeah, this is an aggregate number, so each staple is adding on the next year.
Yep, but still, 2015 to 2018, as you said, certainly an interesting time.
Yes, indeed. So
the Balkans were selling these to
all the hand grenades that they have found, because they managed to get the police, of course, managed to get a hold of a lot of those that people had on them, or when they did raids, they found that they had them in there hidden beneath their beds and stuff like that. And all of them are old Soviet make fragmentation hand grenades that were used in the Balkan wars. So they're essentially,
But were this like Balkan like criminal elements sort of using them in like gang wars, or what are we talking here?
No, essentially the early numbers that you will see there, those were in up until 2013 roughly. That were people from the Balkans. The other part here is mostly Afghani and that kind of criminal narcotics gangs, and the end of the supply chain in turf wars. So
okay.
And we should also say that they were not really. They didn't manage to kill a lot of people. With this kind of thing, it was actually more usual that the people who were hurt in these detonations, as you can see here by the statistics, were actually the guys doing the throwing. Because turns out using a hand grenade in an urban environment is something of a skill.
Yeah, you gotta have careful aim.
Yeah, and it tends to bounce a bit like, since it's shaped a bit like an American football, it tends to bounce erratically. And yeah.
Okay.
I assume they couldn't afford test runs on these things.
I think they kind of just assumed that it was kind of I should say, an 80s action movie kind of situation. You just throw it in there and it kind of explodes where you want it. And, well, turns out that wasn't the case.
They should have just asked help from local CSGO pros. Yeah,
Yeah.
Nordan just think alike.
Yeah, you Swedes and your CS:GO. Let's see. Well, that's certainly a statistic. I don't think we have anything like that in Norway. It's strange
No,
that this would suddenly happen out of nowhere.
yeah, but I think it's really probably a case of someone from the Balkans, the Balkanese mafia. When they were importing some other goods, they got hold of a couple of crates of hand grenades, because essentially what you see after 2018 is that it kind of stops. And this is
They
probably
ran out,
because
basically.
they ran out of ammo. Because the
So,
police,
what would you say? I mean, you said this is turf warfare. Is the turf
Yeah.
warfare here? Is it still going on? Presumably,
yeah, sure, but they have
they
they have
just
gone
don't have
back
hand grenades
to
anymore.
using
Did
guns
this-
and knives.
Did this impact the lives of ethnic Swedes to any degree?
Not really. It would perhaps be because this was essentially just they used it on themselves in the areas where they live. And here's the little thing about these urban areas where we would call, like, have been seen on the news press, we call them the no-go zones and stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
Essentially, these are old 50 areas built in the urban centers of Malmö, Göteborg, and Stockholm in the late 50s, 60s, and early 70s. And they are not really. If you look at the map, you will see that it doesn't really. They are interspersed into separate areas and what do you say, delineated with roads and strips of forest and stuff like that. So in those areas, you have almost no ethnic Swedes still living, because the thing is that you can see that in the white flight statistics from the 1950s and 60s in the US, the same thing is happening here. So
Oh yeah, and the same thing is happening here as well.
it's like there's 3 brown guys in the neighborhood. Time to move.
Yeah, it's not 100%, but it's a bit of an open secret that over time that happens.
Yeah, and it has been very demarked here. Also, this has also been a policy, if you will, from the municipalities and the government to essentially, because since we then when they want to give subsidized housing and stuff like that, then they essentially have just pushed them in the furthest regions of all these urban areas, the end of the line kind of things, end of the subway and tram lines.
Okay, yeah, I see.
So they essentially
segregated them.
Yeah, it has become that kind of, because they have ended up in the least attractive rental spaces.
I see.
And then, and since then there was also been and this kind of area has always been occupied by migrants, but before that it was the economic migrants who came here to work, like the Italians in the 60s and the 70s, the Poles, Finns, lots of Finns. There's always been lots of Finns coming over, as we discussed on the Finland stream.
Uh-huh.
I think the Finns are also still the largest migrant group in Sweden.
Well, that makes sense. I have a video of it's one of these like animated statistics graphs on the immigration populations of Sweden, and Finland and Norway ranks quite high for quite a long time until we get to the 2010s, and then some speedsters come along on the graphs. Let's put it that way. So that's the hand grenades. You want to move on to something else?